So in this video I'll be changing my coolant, changing all the coolant hoses, and also the thermostat. Now the hoses and the thermostat are just more precautionary than anything. I currently got 292,000 on the car and I haven't changed them yet, so I figured it was about time. So here's everything I had to purchase. You want the 2 jugs of the coolant, the conditioner, the inlet hose, the outlet hose, the overfill hose, 4 hose clamps, the thermostat, and then the Lyle spill-free funnel. So the first step is we got to remove that cover from underneath the engine. That's held in with 3 threaded bolts. I believe the heads are 12 millimeter, and then about 200 of those annoying plastic clips. I've actually now, when I put it back up, I just use the 3 threaded bolts because I just got so annoyed always trying to take those clips out and they don't pop out or they're salted in. So those 3 bolts you can see kind of on the right hand side of the picture. Those are the only ones I now use to keep that held up there. So once you got the cover off, if you climb under there and look on the passenger side, you'll see the plug that you just got to turn counterclockwise and all the coolant will start draining out of there. So make sure you got your catch pan under there. And if you want to make it drain a little faster, if you then take the cap off of the radiator, it will come out faster. But even with that said, it'll probably be draining slowly for a good, I'd say at least 10 minutes or so. So you can use this time to then move on to replacing some of the hoses. So the first hose we'll replace is the one that leads from the radiator to the overfill tank. So you just really pull it off the nipple on the radiator side and then pull it out of the overfill tank. And if you want to, I actually then took the overfill tank off. So it's those 2 10 millimeter bolts. And then you just kind of pull the tank up, and then I just brought it in the house and ran some water in it and shook it around to just kind of remove all that sediment that was in it. Now we can move on to the hose that connects the radiator to the top of the engine, if you will. So just grab some needle nose pliers and squeeze on the hose clamps on either end and then pull the hose off. For me, the hose came off real easy on the radiator side, but on the engine side it was kind of stuck on there and I really had to kind of work it to have it off of there. I don't show it in the picture here, but where the red X is, that's part of the air intake. If you need to, that's just held on by a couple plastic screws. And if you just pop those out, that piece will come out and it will give you a little more room. And then you'll see here, so now here is it off of the radiator side, and here is it off of the engine side. And then you can go ahead and put the new hose on. To have it slide on easy, I just put a little bit of Vaseline on the ID of the hose on either end, and that made it slide on real easy. Then for the final hose, we'll have to go under the car and kind of the same thing as the top, just remove those 2 hose clamps and then pull it off of either end. But here now you will get some coolant coming out, even if your drain has now stopped, you will still get coolant coming out, so make sure you have your catch can under there to catch as much of the coolant as you can. And then you do not want to put on the new hose yet, because this is now where we will take the thermostat out. So we got to take this piece off now. Just unscrew those two bolts I have marked here, and then that piece should come off, and your thermostat, if it was like mine, will probably stay in the other half, and then you'll just have to kind of pry it out of there because it gets kind of stuck in there. Here we can see I now have the old thermostat out of there, and then I'll just assemble everything in the reverse order. Put the new thermostat in, then put the piece back on, and then you can connect your new hose with the new hose clamps, and you should be ready to now fill up the coolant. Just before we continue on here, make sure your plug is now back in the radiator. So now that we got the hoses and the thermostat replaced, we can now go ahead and start putting the new coolant in there. So attach your Lyle funnel to the top of the radiator. Then what I did is I poured about half of the jug of coolant in there. Then I shook the conditioner bottle really well, poured that in, then poured the rest of the first jug of coolant in there, and then poured about half of the second jug, and at some point the coolant will stop flowing into the radiator, and it will just now sit in the funnel. So now we're ready to get all the air out of the system. So jump in your car, turn the engine on, and you're going to need to heat the coolant up to at least 91 Celsius or 196 Fahrenheit to open the thermostat. So I had to keep my RPMs between 2 and 3K for a good, I'd say at least 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 10. And then I could see on my app that the coolant was up to temp. And this whole time you could kind of watch the coolant in the funnel and see the air coming out of the system, which is what we want. So you're just going to kind of keep running the engine until you see no more air come out. And then I then turn the engine off and I let the car sit for, I don't know, half an hour, an hour. I headed in and grabbed some lunch because that coolant will be smoking now, so I didn't want to kind of mess with it when it was that hot. And then I came back out, put the plug into the funnel, then moved the funnel over to the overfill tank, and then I put the coolant in the overfill tank until I was at the full line, and then that's all. Then here's just a couple shots of the new coolant and the coolant that was pulled out of there. So the new coolant is on the left and the old coolant is on the right.